success versus significance. Success, it tends to be more about me, where significance is more outward focused.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple different paradigms around this. Another one that I picked up from Bob Shank is that it's a three-circle Venn diagram, and it's passion, purpose, and potential. So
Mm,
we have to have passion. It's something that makes us cry or pound our fist on the table, but we're energized about it. If we're not
yeah.
energized, we don't energize people around us. It's
Yeah.
contagious, right? And
Yeah.
lethargy is contagious too, right?
Mhm.
So we need to have passion. There needs to be potential in the fact that we have the equipping, the experience, or the skill set, or the knowledge, right? That there's actually potential for us to move the needle on this. It's not out of our area of ability.
Keith, you're a husband, you're a father, you're the founder of Freedom Summit Consulting, and so much more. Thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here.
I like to kick the show off by going back a bit. Like, where did you grow up? What was childhood like for you?
I'm a PK, that's pastor's kid,
Yeah.
and was raised in Northwest Washington, and wanted to do music. And so I ended up majoring in music, but then realized what a terrible way to provide for a family. And so I had an opportunity to sell appliances at Sears, Roebuck and Co., an old dinosaur.
Come on.
Caught them in the twilight. They were the second largest retailer in the country.
Wow.
And so was still entertaining the idea of being a worship pastor, and did serve at a church in Bellevue, Washington for a short period of time, but God had different plans for my life.
Yeah.
And so that led me to Chicagoland, and my career took off from there.
Come on. Come on. My show focuses on men's relationship with Jesus and how they balance that alongside their family, their business, their finance, all that stuff. But like, what was that moment for you? I mean, being a pastor's kid, you grew up in the Christian home, obviously, but what was that moment for you that you remember just fully surrendering to Jesus? And was there something that just prompted you to surrender into that moment?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I was in college and had joined a campus ministry that had small groups, men's groups. And so there was an upperclassman that took me under his wing, and he'd take me out for lunch almost every week.
Mm.
And he just started pressing hard. Keith, why do you have faith? I think you're riding on your parents' coattails.
Yeah,
And I think that's an easy thing for kids to do that are raised in the church.
sure.
A very different experience. And so as he started pressing into me, I started pressing into who is Jesus, and is he really my Lord? And so I'm grateful for Tolif was his name. God really used him in a remarkable way.
Come on. Oh man, that's awesome. So good. Jumping over to your business here, the Freedom Summit Consulting. For those who don't know, like, how did this come together? Like, what's it all about? What's the mission?
Yeah, mission for me is to inspire stewardship for my
Mhm.
clients of their resources, relationships, and that includes their business. And so a lot of times we look at business as a means of producing a nice lifestyle and autonomy for our family. And that's not a very compelling purpose, I think, from a kingdom perspective
Mhm.
for the stakeholders, whether it's employees or customers or vendors. And so the way I look at it is I have to pump blood in my heart to be alive, right? That's a rule of the game. If I'm not pumping blood, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I try to optimize for that, right? I exercise this morning. I try to eat reasonably well. I don't think God put me on the face of the planet to pump blood. And I don't think a business God has entrusted to a believer to just generate profit.
Mhm.
Profit's the rule of the game. Let's optimize it. Let's do the things to have a healthy, robust profit. That's not a purpose. So I want to inspire my clients to find a greater purpose for their business.
Mm, man, that's awesome. That's all. And as I was going through your website, you had a video on there that talked about 4 common problems that business owners encounter, which are time, talent, and teams, finance, and exit. Those are so good. And I've seen this over and over again of small business owners just struggling in those areas. But can you deep dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to go into there, but as you know, kind of an overview, time is a big pain point. A lot of times when folks go to a business broker or someone to sell their business, it's because they're burnt out. They're at the end of their rope.
Mhm.
And so, what it comes down to is how effective are you as a leader, and being able to utilize the people and the processes that are available to you. And it's a challenge not just in skills of being able to delegate, but there's a psychological issue there as well, where we want to feel needed. It feels good to be the firefighter and be able to come in and put out the fire. And that are we really empowering the people that we have to grow and develop and allow ourselves the space to focus on vision, strategy, and culture rather than being the hero and coming in and putting out fires and wrestling the alligator. So that's part of the time. On the team front, a lot of times, mission, vision, values, and specifically values on the team side kind of are considered just an exercise and not really applied
Yeah.
on a day-to-day level. So the values are so important to clearly define and establish because if we don't have those as really core, not aspirational, but who we are, who our absolute values are, hire and coach and sometimes release around those, we end up with team dynamics where we don't understand why they're treating us or each other or our customers the way they are. And that's
Mm.
because the values haven't been clearly defined.
Yeah.
On the finance and money side, a lot of times it is a survival mode for smaller businesses where we're doing just what's required to keep us out of trouble with the IRS. And that's important. We don't want to get in trouble with the IRS.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but in terms of having timely and accurate financial reporting, that's kind of a good baseline beyond not getting in trouble. Let's have
Mm.
accurate and timely reporting. But beyond that, how are we looking into the future and seeing how we make decisions around financial impact? And
Mm.
then on the exit side, the fourth one there, it is understanding that we will transition out of our business. It might be at the funeral parlor, but we are going to transition out. And so, how are we structuring our business, our time for that transition, understanding that it is stewardship that
Mm.
goes into the next season and going back to that purpose for the business? God has a plan and a purpose for that business that extends beyond us.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's huge. It's been awesome. I've been reading this book. Probably know the E Myth, and what you just talked about was exactly what's in that book. Like just some awesome stuff
Yeah,
around
Michael
small
Gerber.
businesses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely loving that book right now. And I've not read it before. And so today I'm like, I don't know, 90 pages into it, but I'm just like going, man, this is such a great book. People need to be reading this thing. So I love that you touch base on all of those things right there because it's so important for small businesses to really sit down and focus on those four areas for sure.
Yeah, and I think what I take away from E-Myth by Michael Gerber and a lot of other the books that I've read over time is
Yeah.
that as a leader, where we want to position ourselves is we're focused on vision. Where are
Mhm.
we going? And
Yeah.
we can't know where we're going if we don't know who we are and why we're here. So we
Huge.
need to know who we are, our values, why are we here, our mission or purpose, where are we going with that? So
Mhm.
vision, strategy, how do we get there? And culture, which is that
Mhm.
reflection of who we are, values. And
Yeah.
so what the E-Myth highlights so well is that we get pulled down, we get sucked into these technician roles. And I see sales as a technician role. A salesperson is a technician. It's just their tech ability is selling,
Sure.
or operations or these other things. And so, yeah, that's a great read.
Oh man. Yeah, it's so good right so far. Now, I mean, in the world of, I think the word balance is kind of a myth, but especially when with business owners and people who are having families. But what advice do you give to a dad or a husband out there who's an entrepreneur that's just struggling to find this balance in his faith, his family, his business responsibilities? Like, how do you approach guys who come to you and go, man, I'm just struggling right now?
I'm on the journey with you,
Yeah, yeah.
brother. I, I'm still,
So
I'm still,
true.
I'm still growing in this aspect.
Me too.
Well, I think for husbands specifically, what I'm continuing to learn is that God has given us our wife as not just a helper, but as a warning indicator.
Mm,
And so when our spouse is putting up red flags, uh, we need to do a check yourself and say
yeah,
we need to dig into this diagnostics. There's a warning indicator here. What is out of balance? On the parenting side, man, we get one shot at it. You know,
yeah.
we don't get a do-over on the kids. We can crash a business and start another one. We can't crash the relationship with our kids and get a
Mm,
redo.
mhm.
So I think it's just figuring out not just quality time, I think that can be a cop out, but quantity time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not just having a great family vacation, and that was such good quality time, and we check the box.
Hmm.
It's the quantity. We're trying to do our best after 6 p.m. to turn off all screens until the kids
Mm.
go to bed.
Yeah.
Just disengage from those screens,
Mm.
for everybody. Having dinner together, it sounds so basic, but most of
Huge.
the time, let's have dinner together.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've picked up from the conference that we heard John Maxwell at. What a great idea to have your kids get an allowance based off reading a book. And then what great discussion talk at dinner. Let's
Yeah.
talk about what we're reading. I mean, how enriching for a family. So those are
Yeah.
some thoughts, but I'm on that journey for sure,
Yeah.
figuring it
I
all out.
Yeah, I mean, I loved that conference where John talked about that, man, and getting paid to read books. And my kids love reading books, and we as a family decided, hey, we're gonna have dinner every night together as a family, and so that's a big focus for our family to do that. The other thing I liked, I think it was maybe Jake Thompson who mentioned this, but I think as men, sometimes when we're the entrepreneur focused and maybe our wife isn't such an entrepreneur focused, but maybe she's got this, other kind of strong backing, we tend to look at our wife as like a liability instead of an asset, right? And he said, hey, no, we need to look at our spouse as an asset, not a liability. And
Yeah.
even if they're not on the same mentality of us as an entrepreneur journey. And man, that was an eye opener for me. I was going, man, I'm definitely the more entrepreneur minded driven person, but my wife has so much wisdom around like how I should be doing things. And I love that he said that at that conference as well.
Well, and I think there's another tie-in here too around the marriage and entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
in that a lot of times the entrepreneur has a more of a temperament for risk taking,
Hmm.
and their spouse often doesn't share that same temperament. And
Yeah.
so we launch into business and it's scary for everybody involved. But then if we start getting some wins and some success and the years move on, well, that income's kind of nice and things are okay. But this wraps back into my work, is that there's still that need for security.
Yeah.
And as we start aging and getting older, that insecurity begins to surface again. Where
Mhm.
is this going? What happens if my spouse, the entrepreneur, passes away and we've got this enterprise that I don't want to run, or I don't want to be a partner with my husband's business partners?
Yeah.
That goes back to that stewardship of, we're going to hand off this baton of stewardship, and we
Mm.
need to be thinking about the next generation of leaders. How do we equip them to be able to steward this and have that conversation with them and our spouse? And I think that can really improve the health of a marriage, but because the seasons aren't just like challenge and then it tapers off and there's no more challenges, right?
Right.
In marriage or business.
Totally. Uh, so true. And I've told the story many times, but like it was such a life impact moment for me. But I went to an event down in California with Dr. Greg Reed. He wrote the book 3 Feet from Gold,
Mm.
and I went to his house. Prosperity Camp is what it's called. And there's 50 people there, 49 are millionaires. I'm the one that's not, right? Like I go in there and I meet this guy, dreadhead guy, and but he loves the Lord and he was just awesome. Him and I just connected. Great event. Went back down 3 months later for another event, same thing. And this guy with the dreadlocks, name is Kelly Cardenas. He goes, Erik, let's go sit on the beach and read our Bibles and watch the sunrise. And I was like, man, what a cool moment. Like, I never get to see the beach. I live in Idaho, right? Like, so I go there and I'm sitting on the beach with him and we got our Bibles out and I'm just expressing to him, like, man, I just want to be a full-time entrepreneur like all these other people. Man, they're millionaires and they have awesome businesses. And he looked over at me and he goes, Erik, they got all of that, but how many of them have great marriages? And I just went, oh, like stab in the heart. Like I had my priorities all wrong, man. And it was like, man, if we're not like building into our relationship with our spouse, man, that business means nothing, man. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah. The success is very empty.
yeah.
Without, you know, we want to be rich in
Mhm.
our human state, right? We
Yeah.
want to we want to have more than we need for today.
Yeah.
But being rich is not just being rich in wealth.
Mhm.
It's being rich spiritually, rich relationally, rich in health. And honestly, if we don't have that wealth and relationship and spiritually and with our spouse, with health, who cares?
Yeah.
It's all the money
Yeah.
in the world going to do for you.
Right.
But that's
Man.
what the world says. Get
Right.
more.
Yeah.
That's the
Get
whole
more.
message.
So, so good. I mean, you asked a question on your website, which I thought was really cool. Is you asked the question like, how would you define a successful business? And for you, like, how would you answer that question?
I think that definition is different for everyone.
Mhm.
But the way that I help folks get there is age 75. I think in America, when we think about being 75 years old, we still think of ourselves as being mentally, sharp, having some physical health, maybe even still operating a business with or having the capacity. But is that what we want to be doing at 75? Do we still
Yeah,
want to be operating a business? Do we still want to own a business? And maybe the answer is yes to both of those. But what has the impact been at that point?
mhm.
I think it's a good age because if we go to 80, we see it in our world, abilities decrease over time,
Totally.
right? But it's 65, well, we want to just go retire and live on the beach. Is that success? Is that
Mhm.
purposeful? So I think the best way to solve for that is if we can fast forward to that time frame in our life and we look back and we say, no regrets, what did we do here? How did we impact the people that we were entrusted in
Mhm.
relationship with? Our spouse, our kids, our employees, our customers, the community, right? What was the impact that we wanted to have? And that success is going to look different for everyone.
Mhm.
That I think that the point of it is that we want to work towards that. If you think about a thousand-piece jigsaw puzzle, and we just dump it out on the table, that's a lot of pieces, right? And
Yeah.
that's, I think, the scenario for a lot of business owners where we've
Mhm.
got all these operational employee issues, tax, our marriage, all these different things, estate, tax, investment management, real estate, right? And especially as that net worth does get higher, there's more pieces on the table. How do we
Mhm.
begin to put that puzzle together?
Yeah.
Well, the number one tool I can give you is the top of the box.
Mm.
It's that picture. So we need to have a clear picture of where are we going with this. Start with the end in mind, Stephen Covey, right?
Yeah.
We need to clarify that picture. Otherwise, we get lost in the weeds of day to day.
Mm. Yeah. Man, love that. And you touched base on someone who made a big impact in your life earlier there while you were in college, but having a business coach and mentor, like so important. And you offer business coaching, but like who was that mentor for you along your entrepreneurial journey that really made that big impact on you? And what was it that they told you?
Uh, well, one of them was Arnie Hendricks.
Mm.
Arnie is still a friend of mine, and I stay in touch with him at least monthly. He's in his 70s.
Wow.
Um, and I've climbed a couple mountains with Arnie. He was a mountaineer, and so that wasn't how our relationship started, but it definitely enhanced it. But he did often reference that start with the end in mind
Mm.
mentality with clients, and just being really intentional and recognizing that we need to surround ourselves with quality people. We need to have wisdom in the counsel of good advisors. And we need to not be the smartest person in the room.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So
If we
important.
are, that's a big problem. Either
Right.
we hired a bunch of idiots, which is probably not the case, or that we're really bad at hiring,
Right.
or we're really underutilizing the people around us.
Man, and I think John Maxwell talked about that, or one of the speakers over the, during this week when we were there, and just said you never want to be the smartest guy in the room. And man, I just felt like that was my first time emceeing an event, and so being able to be there and be part of that, man, was just huge, and definitely didn't feel like I was the smartest man. I was like, I think I probably took 30 pages of notes over that thing,
Yeah.
so it was good. I think a lot of people get caught up in success and fulfillment. Like I was looking at those guys who are rich and they have all this money, and like people they're like, "Oh, I got money, so I'm successful." But like, what's the difference in your eyes between success and fulfillment?
Well, as another theme that we picked up at that same conference with John Maxwell, it is the impact that we have on others,
Mm, yeah.
right? So it's success versus significance. Success it tends to be more about me, where significance is more outward focused.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple different paradigms around this. Another one that I picked up from Bob Shank is that it's a three-circle Venn diagram, and it's passion, purpose, and potential. So
Mm,
we have to have passion. It's something that makes us cry or pound our fist on the table, but we're energized about it. If we're not
Yeah.
energized, we don't energize people around us. It's
Yeah.
contagious, right? And
Yeah.
lethargy is contagious too, right? So
Mhm.
we need to have passion. There needs to be potential in the fact that we have the equipping, the experience, or the skill set, or the knowledge, right? That there's actually potential for us to move the needle on this. It's not out of our area of ability. And there needs to be purpose
Mm.
beyond
Yeah.
ourselves. So
Yeah.
passion, potential, purpose, and that's what we're looking for, the intersection of those where we can find significance as an
Yeah.
out.
Mm. Come on. Man, I love this. This is such a great conversation, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I want to transition to legacy because I'm a big believer in legacy. I'm a first generation Christian. My wife's a first generation Christian, so we're trying to build on this legacy for us moving forward down our line there. But what does legacy mean to you, and what is the legacy that you want future generations down your line to say about you?
Yeah. Yeah. Legacy is what remains when we're no longer here.
Hmm.
And I think as parents, our greatest legacy potential is our children
Yeah.
because they can carry out our values and share that long after we're gone.
Hmm.
You know, what's interesting is we talk sometimes about generational sin, right? A lot of
Hmm.
times when we find someone who's abusive, usually if we could go back in time to their upbringing, they were abused as well,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But it's the same with our faith, right? Our walk with Christ and our values. And so that's been the experience in my family where I could look up on a family tree what my great great grandpa's name is. I actually don't know it off the top of my head. I know my great grandpa's name,
Mm.
but I know there was this lineage of faith that was passed down. What a tremendous legacy. I mean, that's first
Yeah.
and foremost is the biggest legacy we can leave is sharing our faith
Mm.
and passing it on to our kids. I picked up from Dennis Rainey these four pillars of parenting that have stuck with me. And it's four goals that I have for my kids. And if I can get these right, nothing else matters.
Mm.
Pretty releasing because we want our
Yeah.
kids to be successful. We want them to have flourishing careers and have, a financial, lucrative path. We want them to have good marriages. We want them to have their own kids, right? A lot of those are out of our control.
Mhm.
But what I can do as a parent are these four pillars. And the one is to help them understand right from wrong. There is good and there is evil, and it's not up to me. I don't
Yeah.
make the rules up. It's transcendent truth from God's word. And that's our anchor. And without that, it's a it's anybody's guess, right?
Totally.
There's
Yeah.
transcendent authority. What's right and what's wrong, what's good and evil. Second, that God has a plan for their life.
Mm.
Ephesians 2:10, God has created us with good works in advance to do. As his workmanship through Christ, right?
Yeah.
God has good works prepared in advance for us to do. How to love and be loved.
Mm.
And that's caught, not taught, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Wow.
the last one, which is so relevant for our current era, is that they are not created as a mistake.
Mm.
God
Yeah.
knit them together in their mother's womb as a boy, as a girl, however they've been created. That wasn't a mistake. God knit
Right.
them together in their mother's womb. If
Yeah.
I get those four things right, good.
Yeah. Man.
Totally.
I love that, man. And man, what a cool thing to be able to impart onto our kids, man, and to see that for future generations. And I mean, it's funny. I look at legacy. Part of my legacy is podcasting, and the reason I say that is if I wish that I could go back 3, 4 generations deep and hear my great great grandfather's story and hear his voice and see it, get the story from him, right? I can't do that, but I can do that future generations down my tribe. They can look back 3, 4, 5 generations deep and go, man, great 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 grandpa Erik was a bad mamma jamma. He
Yeah.
stood up and he was the one that changed the line forever. Right? Like
Yeah.
he's the one that decided to step out of that crazy broken home and decide to do that. And along with grandma, right? Like my wife and I, like I wouldn't be the man that I am today without my wife because she's been through it, like the yuck as well. And we're celebrating we celebrate 19 years being married this year, man. And we're breaking those chains of divorce, abuse, addiction, rejection, man. And
Mhm.
or imparting that on our kids for sure.
Oh yeah, and legacy certainly does extend far beyond our kids. It's just
Yeah.
let's start with that one.
Right.
because it's the
Totally.
greatest ROI. But yeah, absolutely. All of the relationships that we have.
Yeah.
And then to hear about, how we're talking a lot about John Maxwell because we got to hear him speak this week.
Totally.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty jazzed about it.
Yeah.
But the legacy that he's left, what was the quote? You have to have legs to have a great legacy. And so the way that he
Yeah.
has legs is these books,
Yeah.
this entire collection of wisdom that he's imparting upon folks. And so, I mean, that's leveraged through your podcast. It's leveraged through media. It's leveraged through books. But it's also leveraged through relationships.
Yeah. 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 Huge. Man, I love this conversation, Keith. It's been so good. I like to finish the show with a fun question. I'm a music guy, so I
Okay.
love to ask a question like, what kind of music do you like to listen to, or is there a favorite band for you?
Oh man. Uh, a lot of different music. I'm pretty eclectic.
Yeah.
I was a kid from the 90s,
Yeah.
right? So, and being in the Western Washington, Seattle area, never got huge into Nirvana because it
Yeah.
was just so popular.
Sure.
But I was in the Soundgarden and a lot of those other bands from that era.
Yeah.
As time moved on, man, I developed a love for jazz. I was cynical about hip hop because I heard them taking snippets from it and sampling it, and then I realized it was just a different art form.
Yeah.
And then I didn't like country, and then as I learned more about Nashville and the talent, I realized these are some of the most talented musicians in the world. So I'm
Yeah.
pretty much open to everything.
Yeah.
But in more recent years, I tend not to listen to the stuff that probably has the most radio plays.
Sure.
Stuff that's a little bit more under the hood.
Yeah.
One example is Snarky Puppy.
Okay.
Uh, some young guys out of Texas that they kind of do this fusion of jazz and rock and pop. Very jazz infused though. Not never going to be a Billboard Top 40, but the depth of the arrangements and musicianship. And then of course I play guitar at Lake City Church here in Coeur d'Alene and
Nice.
love modern worship for
Yeah.
sure.
Come on. So good, dude. Yeah, I've changed my musical taste over the years. I definitely in high school. I graduated in 98. So it was like, the
Yep.
Corn, Rob Zombie, like, Rage Against the Machine. Those guys were my bands in those days. And I still listen to that, but I've probably chilled out a little bit, but I still like to go and listen to it. And I used to work for Universal Records in Seattle. And so they said, you can't just listen to rock, you have to listen to other genres as well. So it kind of opened my eyes to like, all right, I kind of like this country stuff, and oh yeah, I kind of like this hip hop stuff,
When somebody's talented and they work hard in music,
Yeah,
there's beauty there. It's just whether or not we can appreciate it.
for sure. Man, Keith, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. You're an absolute world changer, man. I love the wisdom and the insights that you shared today, man. I know it's going to be impacting a ton of people, man. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Eric.
Hey, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast but unsure where to go, you need to go check out erikallenmedia.com. Click on the resources tab there. I will walk you through how to start, launch, and run a podcast. I've recorded over 500 interviews since 2017, and I want to help you launch your podcast. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you catch every show when I drop them. Thanks again. Keep changing the world.